Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Global Entrepreneurship Week and Conductor's edition of Game Changers. I am Jeff Standridge, Managing Director of the Conductor, and I'm very pleased and proud and honored, quite frankly, to be here with Wayne Miller, the Executive Director of the Venture Center. Wayne, thanks for being with us.
Jeff, thanks for having me. I'm the honored one tonight, my friend. Thank you. I really appreciate this.
And for all of you who tuned in about a month ago, I have to tell you, I was called away at the last minute in an emergency, and I had to cancel on Wayne after he had already driven to Conway. And so I felt terrible about that. We were going to be able to sit down face to face. Wayne and I don't get to do that very often. And so I apologize to him, and he's already told me to stop apologizing to him, but I apologize to everyone who's watching now that you tuned in about a month ago and you were left with a cancellation. So that was all on me, full responsibility. And I'm just really pleased that I could sit down with Wayne again and that Wayne could sit down with us. Unfortunately, it's not face to face. He's actually zooming in from the East Coast, or from the Northeast, I guess. Yep. Many of you know Wayne. He is a well-known figure in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Arkansas, particularly Central Arkansas. He's the Executive Director of the Venture Center, as I said, which we all know to be a globally recognized nonprofit organization that produces award-winning, revenue-generating financial technology through its accelerator programs for the world's biggest financial services organizations. Wayne brings a wealth of experience in both Fortune 100 companies, in private equity and venture-backed companies, and startup companies. And so I'm really, really excited to spend some time with you, Wayne, to dig in a little bit and learn more about Wayne the person, but also Wayne the leader and Wayne the entrepreneur as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jeff. It is once again, it's a pleasure and an honor. I have the genuine opportunity to work with you from time to time as we try to make the life for entrepreneurs and organizations who are innovating better in the state of Arkansas, which, you know me, I'm still hot on trying to get the license plates changed back to land of opportunity. And I think I'm getting closer. We'll keep working.
There you go. There you go. Well, it is a pleasure to work with you. And I'm very excited about the collaborative spirit that exists now in the entrepreneurial ecosystem that is continuing to grow, working with Startup Junkie, Conductor, Venture Center, Health Tech Arkansas, the University of Arkansas, the ASB TDCs, lots of folks that are really plugging in the SBA, the 20 some odd local coordinators for Global Entrepreneurship Week. How about that?
Isn't that amazing?
Kudos to Grace and Tiffany and certainly Miranda for the work they've done in putting those folks together, but those folks as well in the work you've done of driving Global Entrepreneurship Week in your communities this week. So really glad to see that. Wayne, let's jump in, right? So we'll get to Wayne the professional, Wayne the leader a little bit shortly. But what I'd like to do is let's start with Wayne the person. Tell us about you. Who are you?
Well, the usual story, Jeff. I had to walk uphill in the snow both directions to school without shoes. But other than that, life was pretty good. Nah, thanks. I appreciate that and the opportunity to talk with you about that. I was a lucky kid. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am something that most people don't know. I am a twin. I actually have a wonderful twin sister who lives in Montana and is a wonderful artist, and an older sister who lives in New York City who's also a wonderful artist. I come from a family of great craftsmen, but my dad and granddad were both dentists, and I started down that path as I went to get educated, but was an athlete in college and also in high school. Always had a passion for things with wheels. Raced motorcycles for 34 years of my life, collected cars for a long period of time, restored a lot of cars, loved to use my hands and don't get enough time, obviously, to do that as much as I'd like to and do that sort of thing. But I've had a very, very fortunate path through education, loving family. I have a wonderful wife, a son, a grandson who's 8 years old, who's the light of my life, and his mother is they're just terrific people. And I've had the good fortune to live in some wonderful places in this world. Like I said, growing up in Pittsburgh and going through my education there, but then on to New England. I lived in Rhode Island for about 10 years and then ended up landing back in the DC area where I spent most of my life in Virginia, and then now to Arkansas. So
fantastic.
That's kind of that's the short story.
So what kind of athlete?
In high school, I played soccer, but I was also track. I was a goaltender in soccer and all state in that effort. And then I ran track and I also was a tennis player. And
fantastic.
I enjoy that and still like to play a little bit of tennis. Shoulder isn't as good as it used to be, but still enjoy doing that. So
very good. Very good. So you went to the University of Pittsburgh.
I did. Started on the path of med school.
Okay.
And did not finish that way. organic chemistry, kicked my, what,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so I then took a path towards business and ultimately marketing. And that is also when I started my first company. It was when I was in college. I was spinning records, actually 5 nights a week. Think about this was the time when disco was popular. Believe it or not, I might age myself a little bit with that comment, but I was spinning records at night, making $35 a night, working about 5 nights a week at CJ Barney's in the Wooden Keg and another place called Zelda's Greenhouse. And when you were spinning records, then you had to make sure that when you segued one into the next, that you didn't lose the beat. Otherwise, you lost your dancers, and they gave you a dirty look.
Yeah.
And I had a buddy by the name of George Lamble, who was a double E going to school with me at that time. And we used to have to do all that orally with our ears. And we ultimately developed a product called the Beat Meter and the Beat Counter, which enabled us to do that transition, that segue of music, using a couple of LEDs and some technology. And that was my first company. I started, it was called Discotech, TECH, at my last year of school.
Very good. Very good. Steelers fan?
You betcha, man. 9-0 right now. We can talk about that all night if you want.
Man. Yeah, coming from a Cowboys fan, that's hard to hear. Oh,
that was a tough game. That was a tough game.
Yeah. I go back to the Roger Staubach, Terry Bradshaw days, right, where it was always a blood battle at the Super Bowl, right, back and forth. So
yeah, those were some great days too. But I'm actually still a Steelers fan and very much a Pirates fan as well. I grew up not far from Forbes Field where the Pirates would play, and my dad, as a dentist, took care of some of the teeth of some of the Pirates. So
yeah.
That was pretty neat growing up, and we'd go down and watch a game or two.
I thought it was going to be real ironic a couple of weeks ago when Dallas was just about to upset the soon to be 9-0, but just didn't come through for us.
Well, you guys, I think we played down that week, as they say.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, let's do this. We've talked about a little bit about Wayne. Let's transition into your professional career. So you graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. Just incidentally, what did you end up getting your degree in?
In marketing.
In marketing. Okay, great. I was a triple major, and I only finished with one of them. But
well, yeah, but you're one of those guys who's an overachiever when it comes to education.
Yeah,
and I really refer to you as doctor, right?
I only barely finished one of those majors, right? So crammed a 4-year degree into 5.5 years. So
yeah, well, that's listen. I'm 25 years into my 5-year plan, my friend. So I understand that for sure.
There you go.
So we after that, after school, I had the challenge. My mom got sick, and so we made a little bit of money with Discotech. I actually sold that technology, and George and I made a little bit of money and ended up moving back to Virginia. My mom was ill and was on a long path, unfortunately, to her demise. And I landed in the DC area in Rosslyn, Virginia, and you do what everybody does at that age, which is you go out and buy yourself a restaurant. And I had a friend, Ben Hyatt, and he and I bought a restaurant called Kate's that was the result of a gentleman who had a very bad drug habit and had made the restaurant go bankrupt, and we bought it for $50,000. And anyway, I'd worked through restaurants through college and high school, that sort of thing. So I kind of knew my way around and thought I knew how to run a restaurant. It turns out that we actually did a pretty good job. And so we had that place for about 1.5 years, ended up selling that. And I went to DC and opened another place called the New Orleans Emporium and the New Orleans Cafe, which was really the first Cajun restaurant in Washington, DC. I'd been to New Orleans, fallen in love with the food. And we didn't know what redfish was. We didn't know what gumbo was. We didn't know what andouille was. And so I taught that to people in Washington, DC, which was really a lot of fun. And the restaurant business was tough. It was hard on my relationships. It was a lot of long nights. I loved the business. I was fortunate that I was successful at it, which it's hard for a lot of people to do. But I think that's because I believe fundamentally that, operating a business, 90% of it is being present, right? And in those situations was particularly important. But anyway, I left that and went to work for Kraft. I worked for Kraft Foods. I became a marketing manager for them for 2 brands, which was Philadelphia brand cream cheese and also Cheese Whiz, believe it or not. I can tell you how Cheese Whiz is made, and if I told you, you'd never eat it again. But it is quite a remarkable product. But anyhow, and then did well with them, enjoyed the role. And I had a friend who was in the business of selling hospital equipment, and he was making a ton of money. And I said, I got to get into this sales thing and see what that's all about. And that kicked me off into a career with a company called Hillrom from Hillenbrand Industries, where I was for 11 years, and started in a sales role with them, and then in a managerial role, then got involved with M&A, national accounts, et cetera, and had an 11-year career with them. and then had an opportunity to come back to Washington. Got between marriages and decided to come back and to Washington and be with the woman that I loved, and I did so. And I came back, interestingly enough, working for the Bank of America on with a company called Takeout Taxi. And Takeout Taxi was really the first food delivery service, but think pre-internet, think about telephones, fax machines, and call centers. And that's the way we did it. And the company was struggling. It was a franchise operation. Second day on the job, I came back to lead that organization. I was handed not one, but two class action suits from the franchisees. Had a chance to turn that around, built a plan. People were starting to talk about this thing called the internet. And we thought, well, maybe that would be the solution to doing this. And anyway, ultimately, it did not work out for me. And so I went back to the headhunter and said, and I knew it was fairly high risk getting into it, but Bank of America didn't want to invest any more money into it. We did make a turn, got rid of the tough franchisees, et cetera. A lot of learning. I learned a great deal in that process about the legal aspects of business and so forth. And then I went back to Brian and said, hey, this didn't work out. And at that point, there was a series of accounting firms. We refer to them as the big eight at that point. So they're actually eight. Five are really important. And they were starting to give consideration to building sales organizations at Anderson, at Deloitte, at what then was Price Waterhouse, and Cooper's was a separate firm at that point, et cetera. And so I had a chance to meet a guy by the name of Tony Bazzelli, who was the managing partner of Deloitte in the DC area. Turned out that his mentor and my father were very good friends. He had grown up in Pittsburgh, and he had gone to Catholic high school, which was across the street from where I went to Temple, et cetera. So we had, although he was a bit older than me, we had some paths. So Tony said, look, I want to try to build this sales organization within Deloitte. Do you think you could do it? And so I said, I think I can. So I was hired by Deloitte, and we built Deloitte sales organization. And we took it from, really, I was the first hire. We ended up in 16 cities, generating about $300 million in about 3 years. And I enjoyed my time at Deloitte. It was a different environment, but between Hillrom and Kraft and Deloitte, one of the things I learned about was working in large organizations and how challenging that can be from the standpoint of getting things done, being able to get decisions made, particularly coming out of really being in a sole proprietorship as I was in the restaurants and so forth. So that was pretty interesting. But I then started to, this is late 80s and early 90s, and the internet was starting to really become a thing. And I was approached by a guy by the name of Raul Fernandez, who started a company called Proxicom. And Proxicom was an internet service provider, but also an internet and website development shop who had decided to sort of focus on the Fortune 1000 and was struggling with building their sales organization, getting their marketing right, that sort of a thing, and was also on a path to IPO. And so I was hired about a year before the IPO. I had a chance to go through that process, take that company public, and just had a great run with Proxicom. Proxicom was ultimately sold for about $300 million to a company called Dimension Data. And during my time there, I had a friend who was a mentor, a guy by the name of Dave Abramson, who was an advertising guy. In fact, ties back to Millie Ward, actually, at Stoneward. She and David served on an organization called Amen together. Mm-hmm. And David had this idea for syndicating advertising using the internet as a platform. So the idea was that agencies generate a lot of content, right? So when I come up with an ad for the Conductor, or I come up with an ad for the Venture Center, just talking hypothetically, chances are, as an agency, I'm creating 3 or 4 ideas for you to give consideration from. Many of those good ideas never see the light of day. So a lot of content is created. Much of it doesn't actually come to bear. But on the other hand, small businesses that don't have the capacity to buy advertising, it's hard for them because they can't engage an agency and do those sorts of things. So there's great agency work that's out there, but also if I have the Conductor in Conway, likely I'm not going to do business with the Venture Center competitively as an advertiser, and even in Little Rock. So this created an opportunity for people to be able to syndicate that advertising. So if it was a bank in Brooklyn, we could take that same advertising and make it work for a bank in Miami by simply
Mhm.
repurposing it. And
Right.
there were a bunch of different things that went along with that. But anyway, so David said to me, "Do you think you can help me develop a business plan for this?" And I did. And once the business plan was done, I kind of liked the business that was going on. And I was pretty comfortable at Proxycom. Things were going well there. And he said, "Do you think you can help us raise some capital?" And I said, "I think I can." And I went to a guy by the name of Mark Gine. Mark was a big investor in the DC area. And Mark knew me through Raul and the public offering that we did with the IPO at Proxycom. And long story short, Mark said, "Yeah, I'd love to put some money behind this, but only do it if you get involved." And I did. So I went off and became employee number one. I started as a chief operating officer of admine.com was our company. 3.5 years later, $18 million later, 60 people later, we shuttered the company. So lots of lessons learned there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that sticks with me probably more than anything, and was kind of my MBA. But it's interesting how we talk about failure today a lot differently than we did then, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we tend to embrace a little bit more.
Well, I want to come back and hit on a couple of those in a couple of moments. Before I do that, I want to round out the career progression. And so now you're at the Venture Center. Let's talk about what happened that led you to Little Rock and the Venture Center. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I was about the last 3 years prior, 3.5 years prior to coming to Little Rock, I was in private equity. So as you know, I have medical device history in my background. So I was working for a company out of Tyson's Corner, Virginia. I was the operating partner for a group of LPs, and we were focused on medical device, specifically uh, stimulators, implant stimulation, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did there was we consolidated a couple of companies, brought them together, really did sort of a roll up, helped to bring the market back up, control the product and the pricing. And in the course of that process, really put myself out of a job. And that was okay because private equity is a different life. And I
Yeah.
think you know a little bit about that. And for me, it wasn't a bad fit, but it wasn't a great fit. So when things concluded at Innovative, my wife and I, we had we had a farm in Virginia, as you know, and Tony had retired at that point. So we decided to sell our farm and move to our beach house in Bethany Beach. And I was trying to figure out kind of what I was going to do next. I'd been actively involved in starting a lot of companies, remained uh, involved with the Kauffman Foundation, served on a couple of boards, was acting as a mentor to a number of companies, startups that I had invested in, but also was involved with, and said, what am I going to do next? And the guys from Startup Bootcamp approached me and asked me to come to Miami and do a medical device startup bootcamp and accelerator down there. And I explored it, but I didn't like the structure of the program. I thought fundamentally it was built around creating deal flow for investors. I didn't think it leaned in that heavily for the entrepreneur. And it seemed to me that it was more of a petting zoo than it was truly helping these companies accelerate and helping to mentor these guys along and these women along and grow good businesses. So I started looking around and trying to understand more about accelerators. In the course of that, I was able to encounter the folks at the Venture Center who, Gary Dowdy, who had been there, who I think you know, was fortunate enough to get a position with JB Hunt. He was moving on, and that role was open to come in and operate the accelerators. I courted with Lee and James for almost a month or so, and things were getting close to the start of the program. And I don't know what the hesitance was at that point on all of our behalves, but I said, "Look, I'm gonna get an airplane and come down to Little Rock," and I did. And if you've ever done that, it's pretty remarkable because I had a chance to meet some remarkable people. I met the mayor, I met the governor, I met the head of the chamber, I met some of the great mentors that were associated with the Venture Center. I saw their vision and said to my wife, let's take a run down to Little Rock for a while here and see if we can help these folks with what they're doing down there and learn something in the process. And as you know, I served in the accelerator leadership role for about a year and a half before I moved into the executive director's role, what I've been for about 2.5 years now.
Very good. Venture Center now is on its 7th year.
It is.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So what are your goals for the Venture Center? What do you see into the future, vision wise, goal wise? Where do you see the Venture Center going?
That's a great question, and it's a big question. I think COVID's had some impact on how we're looking at where we're going, but we're sort of strategically fixed around this next year of being in a virtual position. I think we'll get out of this perhaps this time at the end of 2021. And I think that'll be a gradual ramp up.
Mhm.
So we're thinking virtually pretty much about everything that we're doing. The accelerator programs have served us very well. And I think they've served us on a global basis. I think they've served our community well. But really, the area for us to grow, I think, is to be more productive in helping entrepreneurs within the state. And that's why I feel that it's been so critical for us to learn from you all and others in the state doing this and collaborate effectively as far as that's concerned. I hope that we can continue to have an impact and give people the resources that they need and a place to start that want to start businesses.
Mhm.
I don't get up every morning thinking about hunting unicorns. I think if we can help people build great businesses in our state, I think if we can help make the opportunities equal to people regardless of the zip codes that they live in, whether it's rural or it's urban or whatever it might be, that we can also grow this workforce in this state more effectively.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because as we see companies come through here from around the country for our accelerator programs, it's remarkable how many of them really fall in love with Little Rock and want to start their businesses there or expand their businesses there. But we got to grow our workforce to be able to support those folks more effectively. I think I'm so encouraged with what I see with the efforts that you all have put into the support for Archangels, that we're starting to get some momentum around getting capital grown. And I think the Venture Center wants to play a role in that. We're in the process right now of evaluating the development of a fintech organization that will help support from a capital raising perspective. And the
Mhm.
other thing too is I think that, it's very interesting with fintech. I think there are some people who believe that we're fairly one dimensional when you kind of look at that. But the fact is it's quite the opposite. It's very much three dimensional because everything we do today is affected in some way, shape, or form as it relates to financial technology. We see embedded fintech in everything what we do. And clearly the adoption of that through COVID has been even more significant. But
Mhm.
we're
Mhm.
interacting with UALR, we're interacting with UAMS, we're working with you guys with the Children's Hospital, et cetera. So we see some good things coming in terms of expanding that into agriculture, healthcare, and hopefully we can really continue to grow our community support and our
Very
community
good.
efforts as well.
So now that you've had 3.5 years here now and total, something like that, and you've seen the work in Northwest Arkansas, you've seen the work in Northeast Arkansas, Central Arkansas, and around the various industry sectors where we're doing work. If you had a magic wand, what would you do regarding the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Arkansas?
Wow, great question. I could do a lot of things with a magic wand, but I think what uh, I would love to see that the message and the opportunities. I'd love to see continuity between the methods that we all know work and have them deployed truly to every corner of this state.
Mhm.
I would like to see, and I think COVID is helping us with this. I don't think people are flying over Arkansas quite as much as they used to, right?
Mhm.
We clearly know that if we build good businesses, that capital will come to us. But I would love to see folks in Arkansas be more participatory from a capital perspective, because obviously what we do is very high risk investing, right, with early
Sure.
stage companies and,
Sure.
startups, et cetera. But also the positive impact for our community. It is investing in our community, investing in our businesses, and making opportunity happen. So, and I'd love to see us continue to just collaborate more and more effectively, get our universities more involved as far as that's concerned. And listen, we've built they have built about the largest retailer, the largest provider of protein, the largest trucking company in the world. What's next? And
That's
we've
right.
got
That's right.
great DNA in this state, so that
Mhm.
opportunity is in front of us.
That's good. That's good. Take just a brief moment here just to tell folks thank you for joining, whether you're on Facebook or you're on Zoom. I'm with Wayne Miller, the Executive Director of the Venture Center. Enjoying our conversation with him tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about some leadership aspects with Wayne. But before we transition into that, I want you to know that if you have a question that you'd like to pose to Wayne, you can put that in the chat if you're on Zoom, or you can put it in the comments if you're on Facebook, and we'll get a chance to get those questions in front of Wayne in a few moments. Wayne, let's talk about some of your leadership lessons. So maybe a leadership highlight from your career and what you learned from it.
Wow. I think the there's a lot of answers to that question, Jeff. And I think what was at the base of learning how to be a good leader, which is something I think you have to work at every day, right?
Mhm, mhm.
I don't think I don't think it's inherent. I think it is. I think a lot of it is learned. But I was very fortunate to be surrounded by and have the opportunity to interact with some great mentors, and also had great leadership in my family. My dad was a great leader, and that was important. I think when it comes to leadership lessons, um, as we age, we tend to understand the difference about being a boss and being a leader, right? And I know when I ran my restaurants, I was probably a lot more of a boss than today I feel as I am a leader. And we learn so much of that from the feedback we get from our people,
Mhm.
and so I'm grateful, and I think the leadership lessons I learned were very early in my career in operating the restaurants that one was to be kind, be kind to people, that what you demonstrate as a leader inspires others to work. There needs to be a willingness to do the job that those people are doing, and you need to be able to show them that you can do it as well,
Mhm.
and be consistent. But I think the most important thing that I found probably in leadership is the need for integrity in everything that we do. um, you know there's I don't want to get into a political conversation, but boy, we're really challenged in this country right now in terms of where we stand in terms of leadership, and that's coming from so many directions. But we do lead by example, and so we need good examples. And I'm not sure I've answered your question particularly well, but certainly talked about those
Yeah.
things that have impacted me.
Well, let's talk about your what you would consider your leadership high point.
Um, you know, Building AdMine was an interesting opportunity for me. I mean, I went from being one person to 60 people, right?
Hmm, hmm.
And um, you know, building dot coms at that time, there were three things that we had to do: raise capital, raise customers, and raise people, right? Those were the
Hmm.
kind of the three things that we did every day as I led that company. And getting people to buy into the risk of what we were doing, getting investors to have confidence in me to give me their money and to invest
Hmm.
in what we're doing, getting our customers to believe in what we were doing. All of those things took leadership skills to gain the confidence of those people and demonstrate that we had the integrity and the capacity and the grit to do what it took to move forward. I think that was a great leadership opportunity for me.
Very good. Maybe your greatest, the converse of that, your greatest leadership setback, or you said a few moments ago, we look at failure differently than we used to, but whether you call it failure or temporary setback, let's talk about what your worst one was.
There was actually an incident that always sort of sticks out in my head, which is I was in the business of looking at purchasing a very large transportation company in the DC area, and I
Mhm.
came on as the chief operating officer. And this was a 50-year-old company that was being run by an 80-year-old guy that was doing about $50 million a year in business. And in my first 6 months of working there, I uh, I observed a part of the operation that I thought was just unusual, but more importantly, related to it as being ludicrous. And I went to the man who owned the company and I said, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Why on earth would anybody do this? This is just, it's costing us money. And he said, well, it's an idea I came up with about 10 years ago. And the reason I tell you that is two reasons. One is that it was a lack of understanding on my behalf to be respectful of the past before trying to have an impact on the future. And it was a low point because I realized that I wasn't respectful of what had occurred, and that somebody made a decision at one point in previous years at a different time when circumstances were different, but at that point in time was a good decision.
Mhm.
So the lesson there was, be respectful of the past before you try to change the future a little bit.
Very good. Very good. Well, let's transition to some questions from folks who are working with us tonight or watching us tonight, either on Facebook or Zoom. One question is, what do you want people from Arkansas? I'm sorry, what do you want people from outside of Arkansas to know about Arkansas and its entrepreneurs?
Well, I get the opportunity to talk about that to at least 20 people coming in from all over the country twice a year with our accelerators.
Mhm.
And, I think we do a heck of a job of showing them the state. But, I have fallen in love with Arkansas, and I think you know that. And I think
Mhm.
there's a number of reasons for that. One is I love how beautiful the state is, but and the opportunities that it presents itself in the Ozarks and so forth. And I like to get around on my motorcycle and see the state. But when it comes to doing business here, what's remarkable to me for entrepreneurs is the capacity to get things done. If you don't know someone in this state, I can pick up the phone and call Jeff Standridge, or I can ask Collins Andrews, or I can talk to James Hendren, and I can pretty much get myself next to anybody I need to in the state. I have an opportunity to interact with the mayor of Little Rock, with the governor of our state, with French Hill, et cetera, our congressman. We have access to people who can help us get things done and move the needle, and who care about entrepreneur success in the state. And not just because they say that, but they vote with their legislative efforts, with their grants, with the things that are required that we need, the resources that we need to be effective in the state. And the access to it is really pretty easy at the end of the day, and clearly only a degree away. The quality of people in the state, they're good people, they're loyal people, they're caring people, they're honest people, and they sincerely want to see you be successful. And the workforce in the state, my experience with the team that I've built, I've got one of the best teams I've ever had, so I can only speak highly of that. And I think quality of life. So I remember Andrew Bertolino, who was with one of our companies that came to Little Rock and spent 15 weeks with us during the accelerator, and he was from San Francisco, and he said, what I love about Little Rock in Arkansas is that it's anti-dilutive. And I said, what do you mean by that? He says, I can raise capital and I don't burn through it as quickly here because the quality of life, cost of living, the traffic, the rent, these things just are better and less expensive here than they are in San Francisco. So I get a bigger bang for my buck.
Yeah, I was on a podcast the other day with someone from British Columbia, and he said, it's the end of the day now. Are you going home? And I said, yeah. And he said, how long's your commute? And I said, well, let me look out there. I said, it's normally, gosh, about 7 minutes. It'll be 10 today. Looks like the traffic's pretty heavy. So
yeah. Y'all don't know what traffic is. I mean,
yeah, no, well, I do. I spend a lot of time in Sao Paulo and Shanghai, so I know what it is. I'm just happy I don't have to deal with it.
I think they invented it in Shanghai.
Yeah, that's right. So let me just go ahead and say to folks who are watching on Facebook, put your questions in the comments. If you're on Zoom, put them in the chat. We'd love to get your questions in front of Wayne Miller, Executive Director of the Venture Center. Wayne, I'd like to know, what do you tell your family and friends back in the Northeast when they say, what are you thinking? Beach house and Delaware? Yeah. What you say when they say, well, what were you thinking? What draws you there? What just personally, what do you tell them?
The first time I told somebody that Tony and I were going down to Arkansas, they said, what happened? Did you lose a bet? And you have to remember that this is like, I never stepped foot in Arkansas in my life, but I think that's part of kind of who I am and how I'm wired. We love a new adventure, and I cannot say enough about the way in which the community, and Jeff, you've been part of that, and so many others, genuinely put their arms around us and welcomed us and made us feel a part of the state. Good. And it's been inspiring, and it makes us want to work harder and do more. So I mean, the way to understand Arkansas is you got to come and see Arkansas.
Very good.
Tell people all about it, but it's we see that with the accelerator too. We had a guy who came in, Bhushan came over from India, and he honestly expected to see barns and cows and fields. He did not think that Little Rock was like a city at all. He had no expectations. So it was pretty
funny.
Yeah.
So we have a question coming from Facebook. I'm a young professional who's looking to move into a higher level position with more responsibilities. What advice would you have for someone like that who's moving into a new job role and taking on new tasks and new levels of responsibility? What would you tell them?
I think the first thing is that you do have the ability to chart your own destiny. And, obviously as a young professional, you're probably working for someone now. And, one of the things that I love doing, and my team will tell you this, is I love seeing my people grow. And I think most good leaders do. Sometimes you grow them out of the company, but if it's for them to better their lives and their careers, God bless them. We'll manage through and we'll find someone else. But I encourage you to sit down with your supervisor and try to figure out a path, set some goals and build a plan and figure out together how you get to that next role. There's clearly a path. Sometimes that's done more serendipitously, but it can be done very deliberately. And I'd encourage you to start there.
Very good. Very good. Great advice. Again, if you have questions that you'd like to have Wayne respond to, you can put them in the chat or in the comments if you're on Facebook Live. So Wayne, if you were to make recommendations, I know you talked about having an opportunity to visit with the governor, opportunities to visit with Congressman Hill and others. What do you think Arkansas needs to do legislatively, whether it's at the state level or at the federal level? Where do you think our priorities ought to be there from an entrepreneurship perspective?
Great question. I think that one, I love the work that you are doing from a rural perspective, and I think we need to continue to expand the federal and state opportunities and resources to help people in rural areas. Again, it shouldn't matter with your zip code if you want to start a business. So
right.
helping get that knowledge out there. I think that from an investment perspective, we've had this conversation, Jeff, is that the way in which people are permitted to invest in companies today needs to be given a lot of consideration. And people should be able to do that more fractionally with a few dollars without having to be accredited investors, those sorts of things. By God, we're allowed to go to gamble, but we can't bet on businesses, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big issue. I think in the world that I live in, which is primarily focused in fintech, that there are regulatory and compliance issues there that need to be relaxed, that will enable fintechs to be give them more capacity to serve customers and be able to move things at a speed that's more consistent with how we build businesses today, right?
Yeah.
Things have to move at internet speed today. And,
that's right.
And I think that's on a federal level, on a national level, obviously, and also on a statewide level. I do think the work that's being done in Arkansas is good work. I think the other thing I'll add is that historically the growth in our state has been measured in terms of jobs and to some degree smokestacks. And I think Mike Preston and his team at the AADC, I know you play a role in that as well, is really working hard at rethinking that and trying to create the right tax incentives, the right R&D incentives, et cetera, to allow, early stage technology companies and other types of companies to come in. Because, you look at companies that we have growing in Arkansas in that vein, and it's taken them 5, 7, 8 years to grow to 100 employees or more. So those companies don't ramp up necessarily at the same speed as dropping in a manufacturer who's going to give you 1,000 jobs in a couple of months. So we need to rethink that, and hopefully these sort of knowledge worker jobs that we're building as well, that are higher income. And then I think the other thing that's important is that, again, we're growing that workforce, and we're all working to try to do that and help. I think as in the ecosystems that we're building, we can play a role in helping to educate those workforces.
Very good. Thank you for that. I'll tell you, I'm going to give you one more question. We're about to round up our time here. I'll give you a moment to think about it while I remind folks watching about a couple of events we have. So the final question I'm going to throw to you is to leave us with one piece of parting wisdom. I call it kind of the parting shot. What's a nugget that you would leave us with? I'll give you a moment to think about that. While you're thinking about that, I just want to remind folks, we're rounding out Global Entrepreneurship Week. We've had a number of events every day throughout the week. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we've got conversation with a congressman, conversation with French Hill, and we're excited, always excited to talk with a congressman who understands entrepreneurship at its core, who is an entrepreneur at its core. You really want to tune in for that. And then at noon, we've got the scalability check. So we'll have a guest speaker there working with us tomorrow to talk us through checking your business for scalability. That's at noon tomorrow. So Wayne, parting wisdom, give us a nugget.
Seek mentorship. We you don't have to do this all on your own. And the last point I'll make is be kind. Now it's more than ever important, but kindness is currency, as my friend, as my mentor, Dave Harmon would say. And so seek mentorship. People want to help you, and it really can make a difference in your life. And it's why I do the work I do today, because I've had the good fortune of having so many great mentors in my path, help me be a better person, a better business person, a better leader, and so many of the things that we've talked about today. And there are plenty of folks out there who want to give you a hand.
Very good. Very good. Wayne, in the spirit of speaking on behalf of my colleagues at Startup Junkie in Northwest Arkansas, the team here at the Conductor, and in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I want to tell you we are thankful for you. We are thankful for the Venture Center, and we're thankful for your team and the work that you do.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be associated with you guys, every one of you, and have a chance to work with you all from time to time, particularly during this week as we talk about global entrepreneurship and try to make a difference and help the folks in our state do some great work. So appreciate you. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, my friend.
You do the same. Happy Thanksgiving to you, and thank you all for joining. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. Hope you have a safe and a safe holiday and a joyful holiday. If you want to check out more, you can go to the Venture Center. You can Google the Venture Center. You can Google Conductor. You can Google Startup Junkie. In addition to a number of other organizations in the state that serve entrepreneurs. We're proud to be here. Let us know how we can help. Wayne, take care. Thanks again.